a stock answer for when anybody asks me about a trade, to analyze a trade, to grade the trade. And that's that we're not going to know for years who won. And if it's a trade that principally involves prospects and draft picks, even in one direction, then we're not going to know for a really long time. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into football and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. It's been a few months now since Jake Guentzel was sent to the Hurricanes for a package of prospects and picks. And, of course, the one immediate acquisition in Michael Bunting. Jake, of course, went to the Hurricanes, played pretty well for them, continued playing well for them into the playoffs. They didn't advance as far as they'd hoped. Free agency approached. The Lightning moved Steven Stamkos out. Well, kind of shoved him out gently. Stamkos ending up in Nashville. And Julien Brisebois and the Tampa Bay management taking all of that cash, handing it to Jake. He's now in Tampa. And the Hurricanes are left with next to nothing to show for that trade. So here's how this works. The trade happens. The trade gets evaluated in the moment. And anyone who's been a listener to this program can attest that I really, really, really hated it in the moment. I'm not soft-pedaling. I'm definitely not backpedaling. At that time, I hated it. I said so. I also didn't do so with any sort of pretense of predicting the future because that's not part of my job. I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not here to make grand forecasts. Very obviously, if one or more of the prospects that the Penguins had picked up in the trade would pan out into something special, it would be a tremendous trade. And then you know what you do? You say, wow, that was a tremendous trade. Well, we're still quite a ways off from knowing that, although there's hope. Certainly for a couple of these kids, and notably within that, Vasily Ponomarev and Ville Koivunen, not to mention the second-round draft pick, and not to mention, as long as I'm at it, that Bunting showed really well, I thought, in his brief time with the Penguins at the end of the season. Now, is some of that luck on Kyle Dubas's part? Sure. I mean, some of it is, meaning if the Hurricanes had advanced to the Stanley Cup final, or if they'd won the Cup and Jake was a big part of that, that's out of his control. Once the trade is made, it's made. Not that Dubas would want Jake to fail or the Hurricanes to fail. In fact, if the Hurricanes had gotten to the final, the Penguins' pick would have gone from a second to a first. I'm just talking about that prism of who won the trade that always seems to be so important to so many. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. At the time, again, rewinding the clock, my concern with the trade was that I felt Dubas was, to an extent, pulling the plug on the conclusion of Sidney Crosby's career. And that, by the way, was the concern being expressed by just about everybody in-house, not least of whom was 87 himself. Because on one hand, you're saying, we're going to continue to support Sid, we're going to continue to create chances for him to compete for another cup, and then you send out the best, most compatible left winger he's ever had in that player's prime. And it felt to me like there were other ways to go about this, that the Penguins could have and arguably should have kept Guentzel well before anyone could have known what Tampa Bay's payoff would be, and from there find a way to move other pieces, other parts, to try to bring in more young guys. if Dubas gets his way, if Dubas has succeeded in acquiring the right pieces, and then Jason Spezza and his crew are all successful in developing those pieces, again, particularly Ponomarev and Koivunen, then you're going to see a great big W on this trade. And you know what I'm going to say about the trade when that happens? I'm going to say that it was a great big W, and that my concern at the outset was unfounded or over the top or rash or whatever. But there's also this too. And please don't be one of those people who either says or claims to believe that the next 2 or 3 years with Sid don't really matter all that much. He's Sid. Okay? He's Sid. He's going to sign a contract, an extension for another 3 years. That's going to put him in a spot where he can go till he's 40, go hard till he's 40. There's nothing that I wouldn't bet that he'll continue to be the Penguins' very best player for all 3 of those seasons. I'm not exactly going out on a limb with that one. And that's not nothing. That's a very real thing that needs to be embraced by everyone involved, Dubas included. His best chance, Dubas's best chance to win a cup, if we're really being honest here, in his tenure as general manager of the Penguins, when you consider how long GM tenures are around professional sports, is probably in these next 3 years. He's the last one who should be downplaying or dismissing any facet of that. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Mike, who says, "Hey DK, could Rickard Rakell's problems that were discussed on the Thursday episode be tied to a shoulder injury? I remember seeing him at one point during a broadcast in which they had a camera in the locker room during an intermission wearing a harness on his shoulder." Yes, Mike, he did have a nagging shoulder issue throughout the season, and it was what had him out earlier in the season. Almost always in professional sports, when a player returns from an injury, they're coming back a little bit too soon. You're never going to have a situation, I don't think, that's comfortable between any team and any athlete where the athlete says, no, I need to be 100% before I'm back. That just doesn't fly in that environment. And you'd better believe, in parentheses here, that goes double for concussions. End parentheses. Where Rakell was concerned, it wasn't a concussion, obviously. It was the shoulder. And yes, it did give him problems. However, the reason that I really paid neither the shoulder issue lagging deep into the season nor his initial injury a whole lot of heed on yesterday's episode is that he actually became much more productive as the season wore on. And for that matter, he was more physical, more engaged along the glass and along the boards than he'd been in the early going, even when he was going really well. A final point on this, to our knowledge, and the Penguins, as secretive as they are about injuries and so forth, as a season is going along, after the season, they'll tell you when somebody's had some kind of surgical procedure, and there's been no word related to Rakell in any form, which is good, by the way, because shoulder surgeries are, they're messy. And at the risk of reiterating what I said yesterday to an extent, he just needs to be more direct in terms of the way he starts games on top of how he starts the season. He needs to be more aggressive. He needs to get his fingernails a little more dirty the way he did a couple seasons ago with the Penguins, and not as much how he did for the better part of this past season. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these on Monday.